But one supplement you're a huge fan of, iodine in your iodine shield. Mm-hmm. I want to come back into that. There's a lot of detail we can cover within this subject. For people at this point who aren't supplementing with iodine, talk about the current landscape and what they're not getting from the diet and why iodine is so beneficial.
Well, they're not getting iodine from the diet. The iodine would only have been if you were having dairy, which I don't recommend, when the cow's teats were cleaned with iodine. And then in the 60s, they started using Clorox to clean the cow's teats. So the land, the soil is supposed to have a certain amount of iodine in it in certain places. And the grass that the cows would eat would have the iodine. But it's not really the issue of the goiter belt that, we know places, Switzerland, any mountainous region is going to be devoid. The soil is going to be devoid of iodine. The issue today that is more concerning are the substances that interfere with the absorption of iodine, the fluoride, the chloride, the bromide. So that is really why people need to supplement, because they have been exposed to substances that prevent the absorption of iodine, even if they can get it in their food source, which they can't really.
You mentioned the other halides and how they can get in the way of absorption of iodine. Where are those typically found?
Your toothpaste, water, if they've put fluoride in your water, chlorine in the pool, bromide in my chair, probably this, fire retardant substances, fabrics, things like that, car seats. People aren't licking their car seats. I think it's more the fluoride that's in the water and PFAs, which are in our water that we can't escape. There's PFAs in the Maldives. So where are we going to go? We can't go anywhere. We shouldn't be running for the hills. We should be taking iodine to prevent insufficiency.
And as you explain that, I can see this as a double negative where the other halides are so apparent in today's modern world, affecting our iodine absorption. And then the one halide that we want to get isn't readily found in the food anymore. So it's hitting it from both ends.
That's correct. I mean, iodine is an essential nutrient. Chloride, bromide, and fluoride are absolutely not. Fluoride being the one that is highly touted as something that prevents your teeth from deteriorating, but this is not true. It was never proven. There's actually evidence to the contrary, that it causes fluorosis and makes your teeth rot, which is what the fluoride content in actually natural water sources. Fluoride is a mineral that is in the ground. So there are places in the world that have too much fluoride in the ground. Certain places in England, where tea is grown, India, China, those places, the well water is very, very rich in fluoride. And those are the people those areas, there are a lot of congenital hypothyroidism, dwarfism, low stature, I think is what you're supposed to say today, and learning disabilities, and of course, goiter.
Let's talk more about that tea piece. So the tea leaves are being grown in soil that contains fluoride. So the end product that is dried out and shipped and packaged, you're getting that when you steep your tea, you're getting that put back into the water?
Yes. And the cheaper teas have more fluoride than the more expensive teas. They have an actual rating system of how much fluoride is in the tea. Brick tea, loose, has a lot more fluoride than your more expensive brands. It's kind of like selenium, Brazil nuts. People think that they're going to get selenium from Brazil nuts. There are areas that have more selenium in the soil, and those trees, the nuts of those trees will have more selenium in them than the other ones. But tea, it has the acidity that people like with tea means there's more fluoride in it. So they actually, push they're augmenting the fluoride by breeding and things like that to have the tea have more fluoride in it, so it has more acidity in the flavor.
All right, so cheaper teas, more of an issue here. How big of a problem is this in general? And is there specific types of tea people can still drink and not worry about this?
No, it's poison. So it's a huge problem. I actually gave this paper to somebody in the UK. An Irish researcher published a warning to his country because they've mandated fluoride in the water, and the Irish drink a ton of tea. So there's a huge rate of learning disabilities, fluorosis, fracture, bone, osteoporosis, et cetera, and everything that fluorosis causes in Ireland. So I don't think there's any way you can get away with drinking black tea, white tea, green tea. I mean, I lived in China, so I had this sort of access to the best teas in the world. None of them, I would consider all of them to be poison today.
Interesting. So even like a ceremonial grade matcha tea, organic,
yeah,
that's being sold as a health food.
Yes.
In your opinion, stay away.
Absolutely stay away. Matcha's green tea. We used to do Kung Fu Cha. I used to do martial arts, and the whole Kung Fu Cha is a whole ceremony of, I had some really good tea and followed the whole ceremony and everything. But I have a grandchild. They live in the UK. Tea is forbidden.
For somebody that's been drinking a lot of tea in the past, is there a way to test to see how much of it's accumulated in the body? And also, can you test teas for somebody that's in love with their tea right now, doesn't want to give it up, and wants to just see if their particular blend, this is an issue for, even though it's such a big issue in general? Can we test the tea? Can we test the body?
You can test the body. You can test the fluoride, bromide, and chloride content in your urine, and test the iodine. How much iodine is not able to come in because of these halides blocking the absorption of iodine. Hakala Labs in the U.S. does that. It's 24-hour urine uptake. You collect your urine for 24 hours. After ingesting 50 milligrams of iodine, you collect the urine, they test it, and they give you the results of how much bromide, the toxicity of halides in your urine, in your system. The teas, this Irish paper, actually, I have found all the brands. He went through all the Irish brands that are popular. I haven't seen, I have a couple of papers from China that did test the fluoride in, not in particular teas. Yes, in teas. I actually have it because there's Anhui province and there's different provinces that they did test. But I don't know if you can test your brand. I don't know what your brand is. My mom used to drink Celestial. No. Constant Comment. So I have no idea what you guys have in the stores in your tea section anymore. But I know that matcha is popular, green tea, all that. Avoid it.
Any other plants that are prone to this, taking the fluoride and concentrating it in the product?
Tea is the worst one. Yes.
So coffee, not an issue.
Coffee, not an issue.
No other plants people are eating?
Well, there are plants that prevent the absorption of iodine. Brassica, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale, all those plants, that whole family of plants, they figured that out because the farmer went to check his rabbits and they were all eating cabbage leaves and they all had little goiters. So the scientists, I don't know if I talked about this last time, the scientists went there and isolated basically what is in today's antithyroid medication, methimazole, from these plants. So it is a antithyroid medication or antithyroid substance because it prevents the absorption of iodine. So in my book, Good Fat is Good for Girls, Puberty and Adolescence, I actually do list more foods that we eat. Oatmeal is another one that prevent the absorption of iodine.
Any others you can think of off the top of your head?
Flax seeds.
Before we get into how somebody can supplement with iodine, we're going to get back into dosages and details within that. Let's talk about why iodine is so important.
Every single cell in the body needs iodine. Every tissue needs iodine. So your adrenals need iodine, your salivary glands, your the male's prostate, not just the thyroid, female uterus, ovaries, breast tissue. Every mucus-bearing tissue has a ton of iodine in it. So your intestinal, the microbiome stuff that people are always talking about, not going to happen if you don't have adequate iodine in your intestinal mucus. Iodine is an antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral. It's a heavy metal chelator. As I said, it's my shield. The thyroid takes a minimum of 6 milligrams. The breasts in females take 5 milligrams. Can't remember how much the prostate takes. I would consider any cyst in these tissues, any growth, any inflammation due to iodine deficiency.
And from last time we talked, the ideal dose of Lugol's, as you recommend the Lugol's, for maintenance was 2 drops of 5% per day.
Yeah.
Is that still correct?
Maintenance after you have, yes. If you have had, I have women who come to me with swollen lymph glands, fibroids, in their uterus. So I will have them douche with iodine. So you're actually getting it closer to the tissue that needs the iodine. If you're taking it orally, that's why Lugol's is better because it's much more easily absorbed. You're taking it, everybody's going to fight about the iodine if you are severely deficient. So sometimes it's better to just get it. People paint their breasts with iodine.
And when it comes to time of day to take it, does it matter? Is it better earlier on in the day with food? Just details on to best absorb it.
Yeah, I would say earlier in the day. We are supposed to peak between 6 and 9. All our hormones kind of peak at that time. So you're waking up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed to greet the day. I would take what you need in the morning. There are people who have inflamed thyroids that might react to the 2 drops that I'm saying you should take. So then you need to see if you've got nodules or, thyroid antibodies.
Explain that in greater detail. What you're saying there is if somebody already has a problem in the thyroid, if they activate that by taking Lugol's, they might run into problems because of that.
Yes.
Otherwise, iodine isn't something we need to worry about. The kidneys will remove excess.
Correct. Now, imagine the tissue that has been devoid for a long time. So that could be the uterus, that could be the ovaries, that could be, the breast tissue. So, but usually the thyroid, because the thyroid is all follicular. Every part of the thyroid is the follicles are always there to make hormones. So breast tissue is not that way. Uterus is not that way. Prostate is not that way. So if it hasn't had the iodine it's need, if it's kind of hunkered down and it hasn't been producing adequate thyroid hormone because it doesn't have enough iodine, and it has maybe grown an extra piece, expanding itself, trying to get more iodine, that extra piece or that inflamed thyroid will sit up and take notice and scream at you.
And how will somebody know if that's the case?
Palpitations, they might have hyperthyroid symptoms, but they desperately need the iodine anyway. So then we do a detox.
Okay. So let's say somebody finds out they have one of these nodules. They need to stop taking the dose you're recommending here. How do they or can they go about healing that?
They can definitely go about healing that. I always recommend they do the salt loading protocol by taking a small amount, 1 drop of iodine, a glass of half teaspoon of salt, and a little glass of water, followed by a whole bigger glass of water until they have to urinate, because this is the way that the iodine will attack, and the salt will pull the other halides out of the system. And so that's a detox. Iodine becomes vapor if it's attached to salt.
Okay, so is that more a protocol for somebody that's new to iodine? I was getting at the person that has some kind of growth on the thyroid, and then they're having a problem taking the iodine. What you just explained there seems like a flush for anybody that wants to basically get everything to ground zero.
Mm-hmm.
The part you just explained there, is that for everybody or just somebody with a nodule?
Well, I think it's for everybody, but definitely somebody with a nodule, because they are not able to have, their system is already so deficient in iodine that that part of their tissue might react. So it'll start working. And just it starting working can possibly make every single organ in the body. The heart is very much so. Epinephrine is always telling the heart the rhythm to beat, right? And that comes from thyroid hormone. So if all of a sudden there's more thyroid hormone than your body hasn't dealt with in decades, everybody kind of has to get in line and figure out how to use that hormone again. It's like resistance.
Okay.
So yes, it is a flush. And this, what I'm talking about, is addressing also resistance to the hormone that is made.
But for somebody with a nodule on the thyroid doing the flush, will that physical nodule dissipate over time?
Over time, but not just with the flush. But definitely over time, you have to remove inflammation. You have to make the autoimmune. I mean, this is an autoimmune state, right? So the immune system is actually attacking there's a combination of the thyroid is expanded in order to get more iodine. The thyroid is also has got scabs on its knees. It is not able, it's being attacked by antibodies. You don't have to have positive antibodies to have an inflamed thyroid. So the inflammation, they could just look at an ultrasound and tell you that you've got speckled thyroid tissue. The fact that it's hypervascularized, that is a definition of inflammation. Your antibodies might be negative, but your thyroid tissue is inflamed. So an anti-inflammatory diet, removing carbohydrates, etc., will definitely help that too. It's crucial.
From people you've worked with, do you find somebody with a nodule, most cases can remedy that without surgery then?
Yes, absolutely. What is difficult to remedy without surgery, just like somebody who maybe has a foot-long fibroid, right? So there is a point where you can teach the body anomalous tissue to regress. There is also a point of no return. A very large goiter may need surgery. It's kind of hard to make that tissue that has become also calcified to some extent to regress. But definitely, all of my patients, goiter is more difficult. A very large, softball-sized goiter is going to be very difficult. But inflamed thyroids, smaller goiters, they've all regressed. And nodules, they regress.
Essentially, is a goiter just a nodule that's grown out of hand?
Both. It's also the thyroid itself enlarges. All the follicular tissue will enlarge. So inflammation. Now, Hashimoto's is, the lymph tissue in the thyroid is swollen.
Okay, so we know if there's a small nodule, good possibility following doing flushing in the lifestyle we're talking about today, they could reverse it. If somebody has a full-on goiter, can they reverse that naturally or no?
It depends on the size. It really depends on the size. A very large goiter that has become calcified, how can you can't, it's not, that's why they do the echogenic testing. They send sound waves to the thyroid to see how fast the sound wave comes back. If it comes back very fast, it's hard, it's calcified. If it comes back slowly, it went into the thyroid, which is just a big bloody mass of follicular tissue. So you want it to be a big bloody sponge. If it's got hard pieces on it that are calcified, how can you can regress a cystic vascular mass. You can't regress a hardened piece of tissue.
Makes sense. So for somebody in that case where it's just earlier stages, there's nodules forming, but they're small, they're still in hope that they can reverse. You mentioned that protocol with the salt. Are they doing that daily along with the lifestyle, or how often would they do that?
No, they're just doing that for a week. And sometimes they get diarrhea because, stuff comes out. But, I have many teenagers now who have thyroid nodules. So nobody's checking kids because they're just looking at TSH. So you can have rheumatism, you can have other autoimmune conditions, and they're not going to look for it because they don't associate those conditions with thyroid issues like I do. So if you are 70 years old, it may take more time to change this tissue that you've had, because most women become hypothyroid because of adolescence, which is what my second book is about. Iodine is so necessary to have a healthy healthy puberty, both male and female, but really, really important in female. But by the same token, I have more and more males today as patients. As I said, I have adolescents, pubertal, young people who have thyroid issues. So if you look at how the body has, if it has tried to heal since you were 12 and you're 70, we'll do the best we can. But if you have a softball-sized goiter, I don't think that we can make it shrink.
For somebody right now who is a young adult, feeling healthy, but they haven't been supplementing with iodine to this point, it sounded like, but I want you to confirm, doing that flush would be a good idea for them as well? And if so, how many times, if they're not suffering right now?
I have a lot of people's kids. So the flush is, you can do, my son is going to go to a pool because he hurt his back. And mom is an osteopath, but she's not in Athens. So he's been given some exercises by an osteopath locally, and he's going to go to a pool. And I said, honey, triple your iodine intake, because he's going to go in a chlorine pool. So I would say that it sort of depends on the situation. It depends on your environment. But what I'm talking about with females is that parents are now conscious of precocious puberty. We know that precocious puberty is bad for adulthood. There are mental health implications involved. So iodine supplementation as a child is important for that, to prevent that.
So you gave that example there of your son going into a pool, upping his shield of iodine before going in. I would assume that would translate to any situation where somebody is going to come in contact with a lot of halides. If knowingly they're going to be doing that, they want to up their iodine beforehand?
Yeah, and I do it when I travel. Any infection, I tell, if they're, I have a cold, double your iodine, because iodine, all nutrients disappear. We use more nutrients when we're in a state of stress. So if your body's fighting an infection, that is a stress state. You need more iodine. And then it's also an antibacterial, antiviral. So that's great. It helps, it boosts your immune system. Your immune system needs iodine. So we regularly travel. And when we travel, we take more iodine. And then if somebody has a cold, I talked to my daughter today. My grandson has a cold. And I'm literally, she's nursing him. Honey, it's not enough for him to get the iodine from your breast milk. Get him to have a couple of drops of iodine. He's 2 years old.
Okay. How young can somebody start to take iodine orally?
Well, I'll just say my grandson is going to be 2 in January. He needs iodine. So I want her to somehow we were trying to brainstorm how to get it in him, because he doesn't drink juice. He's getting it from her breast milk, but not adequately. She's very busy. There's stress, and she can put it on a piece of meat.
Right, but what I'm getting at is, you mentioned 2 and you wanted him to get some, but for a
babies who are nursing,
like newborns, should they be supplementing, or do they get enough
my
through the
daughter
breast
has
milk?
been taking a lot of iodine, and he's had enough, but he's now older and he's eating more regular foods. So nursing is enough.
So through childhood, say somebody ends breastfeeding at 3, they're eating solids. The parents are aware of what we're talking about today and want to make sure they're getting enough iodine into the kid. We talked about that 2-drop dose, but that's for adults. Is that a good dose for kids as well?
I would say 1 drop.
But again, like I said before, highlighting the fact that the kidneys can remove excess.
Yeah.
There is so much fear around iodine. That's why I want to get into the nuance here, because we've been, from what you're sharing, for worse, we've been instilled with so much fear around this element.
It is a water-soluble nutrient. So it's not like vitamin D. It's not like vitamin A. It's not like, except for, well, selenium. You can be toxic in selenium. That's why I don't recommend supplementing. But iodine is a water-soluble nutrient, and all my books from the 40s and 50s they measured the kidneys. They checked, they tested people's urine. So they did all this research for us that tells us that iodine excess comes out in the urine. And the problem that people are the problem is that nobody's doing the Hakala lab tests. They're all doing the local lab, and they're testing radioactive iodine. They're all looking for Chernobyl. None of these iodine blood tests that you get are testing organic iodine. They're testing for radioactive iodine.
For somebody like you that's been on iodine for a long period of time, you're fully topped up. Do you ever do that salt protocol that you talked about?
I haven't in years, no. No, I stopped drinking tea. I did it when I stopped, years ago. I was drinking a lot of tea. I was going back and forth to China. No, I don't need to do that.
Okay, so you already talked about a week. If somebody has nodules, they would want to incorporate that. And then for somebody who is a healthy adult about to begin an iodine protocol like you're talking about here, would they just want to do that salt protocol 1 or 2 times to flush everything out?
I put it on the protocol because most of my patients are drinking, a lot of them are drinking tea. In the US, it's iced tea. They think that it's healthier than coffee. They write decaf tea. So that's why I put it on their protocol, because we got to get rid of the halides from the tea. I can't go into, I used to look at, I had a patient from Kazakhstan. I had, the iodine content in the soil of where this person was from. So, people from Michigan, I'm going to, okay, man, yeah, maybe you need more. Maybe that's why. My family's from Tennessee. The mountains are devoid of iodine. So it's sort of a regular thing that I have people do now. It's not, some people, as I said, they get diarrhea. Some people don't want to do it for a week. One person asked to do it for less because they were afraid of the salt. You have this whole hypertension fear that also comes with salt, a whole other context.
We talked about best time to take it. It sounded like that would be sometime in the morning. What about spreading the dosage out throughout the day? 2 drops, say taking 1 in the morning, 1 around dinner time. Any advantage there?
I don't see it.
Any advantage including that in the food of a pet?
Definitely. That J. Crow's is geared towards animals anyway. They don't want you to think that they're selling it to human beings. For horses, right? So we know that there are tons, that hypothyroidism is huge in pets today, dogs and cats, because of what we're feeding them. So yeah, I think I used to give my dog iodine.
For somebody who has autoimmune thyroid issues, Hashimoto specifically, there is a lot of fear. There's already fear about taking iodine in general. And then there's another additional layer for people in that category. When you're working with someone with Hashimoto's, is the protocol any different with iodine?
No, and I explain all of this. I go into research. I've researched all of this, and I explain in my article on my articles page about why there's this fear today. So it's Theodore Kocher won the Nobel Prize in 1911, and he had a reaction to sodium iodide. He might have also been taking who knows what other kinds of stuff. So he kind of started the anti-iodine thing. He's the one who associated taking iodine with hyperthyroidism. At the same time, every single physician was giving iodine to their patients. And then they all of a sudden stopped because he was a big guy. He just won a Nobel Prize. Everybody thought, oh, and people complained. Other doctors complained that now, iodine has been given a bad rap. And then they started using it again to calm down patients when they were calm down. Actually, it's associated with hyperthyroidism. When they were cutting out people's goiter, they would give them a ton of iodine to make the heart not beat too hard. So it came back into favor clinically. But unfortunately, these were surgeons who loved cutting stuff out, and they were still geared towards cutting out goiters rather than healing them. So we have documentation of somebody like Kreil saying people who have inflamed thyroids, give them iodine and natural desiccated thyroid, and it will shrink. So, but I have to go into all this, there's so much documentation that I have to explain when we talk about this, and I do that in my articles.
Does somebody need to ease into it, though, more if they have Hashimoto's, taking the iodine?
No. Your thyroid is inflamed. Remove the carbohydrates, remove the food, remove the tea, remove all these things that you're doing. Maybe you're running. Maybe you're, doing CrossFit. Maybe all those things that are raising cortisol levels will also cause your immune system not to function properly. It's not the iodine. The iodine, everybody has to take iodine.
Okay. I just thought there might be some nuance there with dosages and easing in, and somebody who is, their thyroid's under attack and at least has a certain amount of damage at that point.
Some people have symptoms and some people don't. Some people have positive antibodies and they don't react to the iodine. I've had patients react to the iodine with palpitations who had no antibodies. So, it really goes with, you have to address each case individually. There's not a hard and fast rule for people, because some people don't react and some people overreact. And then we do the flush, and then we go very slowly because of resistance.
Are there any other supportive nutrients somebody wants to make sure they're getting with the iodine that complement that as they're turning their thyroid back on?
No, they're all in food. So you have this famous cofactors of selenium and zinc and yada, yada, yada. I'm sorry, I don't think any of that's necessary if you're eating steak, because all of those are more bioavailable in the ruminant meat that you're eating.
Okay, important caveat there, though, for somebody who is eating the way you're talking about, which for a lot of people is extreme and won't be going to that level. Which is fine. Everybody has their own journey. And,
Sure.
And yeah, it's for them to decide. But I just think it's important we highlight that's if you're consuming a carnivore diet, which is heavy in ruminant animals.
Well, the thing is that supplements can be toxic. So selenium is very easily toxic. I talk about in my book, Good and Fat is Good for Girls, that it's you need a lot less selenium than it is, 200 micrograms is usually what people are taking or told to take. And that's too much, because selenium is easily toxic, and too much selenium actually prevents the thyroid from making hormone. So I just don't like supplements, because you're getting this huge, it's like taking a club to your nutrition rather than allowing your body to decide, go to the market and say, I'll have a little bit of this, I'll have a little bit of that, I'll need a little bit of this. And it's in the form that the body recognizes, rather than hitting it over the top of the head with, 100 milligrams of zinc.
If you enjoyed that clip, you're going to want to head over here and catch a full episode. I'll see you over there.
Every single cell in the body needs iodine. Every tissue needs iodine. Iodine is an antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral. It's a heavy metal chelator. That's my shield. We use more nutrients when we're in a state of stress. If your body's fighting an infection,